Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Voices in the Game. We're filming this in the winter, so we hope you all are staying warm out there, especially in these tough conditions that we have had in southwestern Pennsylvania. And if you are a fan of a particular college sports team in southwestern Pennsylvania, they're known as the Pitt Panthers. I think you may have a good guess who our guest is on today's episode. You hear him calling Pitt Panther Athletics on ACC Network Extra. He's the director of broadcast and video production for Pitt Athletics. He is Jason Earle. Jason, thank you so much for taking a few moments out of your evening to chat with me, my friend.
Colton, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super looking forward to it. I know we have been trying to make this happen for a couple weeks now, so I'm glad we can get it going.
Yes, likewise, Jason. So I would love to just get started with, your early beginnings into wanting to be a sportscaster. So do you remember at what point in your life and why you decided that, hey, I think I might want to be a sportscaster?
Yeah, I think like all of us sportscasters, we grew up loving sports, right? Watching it any opportunity that we got. But for me, there was something about the public speaking aspect of it too. I had always kind of had an interest in, kind of presentation and public speaking. And I did theater in high school and stuff like that. So I always kind of had it in the back of my mind as a potential career path. And then once I realized that I was never going to be good enough at the sport itself to make it big in that, I kind of shifted to thinking about doing it, broadcasting as a career and still keeping sports a big part of my life. I think a lot of us in the business remember growing up playing imaginary games in the backyard and announcing them to ourselves. So I was definitely doing that, whether it was basketball or wiffle ball or whatever it was. And, kind of just doing that. And the older I got, the more I kind of looked at it. I was like, maybe this is worth pursuing and seeing if I could really take a crack at this. And went to high school in North Allegheny and started doing some TV stuff there, morning announcements, nothing too crazy. But then got to Pitt and got involved with the student radio station. And the more I kind of got experience, the more I thought that I might be able to really pursue it as a career. And I'm fortunate that it's led to some cool opportunities. And I've met some great people along the way.
And did you grow up a Pitt fan as well, Jason?
I did, yeah. So I grew up, honestly, I feel like all of us, Colton, have one or two teams where we really look back at our childhood and we say, that was the team that truly made us love sports. I'm curious to hear your answer as well. But for me, it was hands down Pitt basketball. Growing up, I was probably 10, 11 years old when they won the Big East Tournament Championship. And obviously they had some years where they were a one seed in the NCAA tournament and made some runs there. Those teams were unlike any other sports team I've ever watched. And they are kind of the reason I think that my favorite sport to this day is basketball, specifically college basketball. I absolutely love it. So yes, I did grow up a Pitt fan, and yeah, it's been great. I love watching Pitt hoops, Pitt football, Pitt anything to this day.
Boy, the Big East was just so special, wasn't it? It's just you and I getting that chance to see that firsthand growing up with what Coach Dixon was able to do with the program. Boy, it's just, I just always remember, I just see on social media, I think everybody misses Big East basketball. It is just so special.
There was just something different about that Big East vibe. And, watching the Big East tournament on Saturday night at Madison Square Garden and hearing the player introductions and things like that. I wish that I would have appreciated that more when I was younger. Obviously, it in many ways has kind of gotten taken away now. I still enjoy Big East basketball, but everyone would agree it's not the same as it once was. I did go with my dad and my brother and some family friends to the 2013, which was kind of the final Big East tournament with the Syracuses and Louisville and Pitt, obviously. And so that was a really cool opportunity and experience at Madison Square Garden. But you said it, it's just the best.
Yeah, for me, Jason, I was just thinking it was really hockey for me growing up. You talking about your interest with, how Pitt basketball really got you into it. it was the Penguins for me, and just turning on FSN Pittsburgh and just watching and listening to Mike Lang. I actually went to the Penguins game last night against the Senators, with us recording this on Tuesday, February 3rd. And yeah, and I had a chance to actually go by the Mike Lang exhibit that they had there. All those memories came back to me on where my first interest in wanting to be a sportscaster got to be. So yeah, that was really cool with you sharing your story.
So I guess we have you to blame for the end of the winning streak then, huh?
I know that was somebody at work told me that. No, actually, my dad told me that, is saying, like, I don't know, Cole, and hopefully the winning streak doesn't end. So yeah, so I was bummed that they lost, but yeah, I got a chuckle out of that. I was like, well, I guess it was my fault. And it was my first game of the season too, so that made me even chuckle a little more. Yeah, and so, Jason, over the summer, actually, we had somebody on who I know that you know very well, and that is Mr. Kevin Smith, who was, I believe, one of your first professors at Pitt. And he was talking about how the broadcast program at Pitt, I think, was just so new. He talked about that when you first started there. So, how was that first like when you did start at Pitt, knowing that it just seemed like that the broadcast program was just so new at the time? And it was something that I think, you could obviously answer this for me. It was something that I think was really started by Kevin.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I always kind of tell people that I feel lucky that I was at Pitt when I was. To be honest, I came to Pitt not even really knowing that it was in their plans to have a broadcast curriculum. I didn't know that Pitt Studios was even a thing when I came to Pitt. Wasn't really aware that the ACC network was going to become a thing that would launch while I was in school. I really just came to Pitt because, like we talked about, I was such a big fan growing up, had grown up in the area, coming from a Pitt family. So those were more of the main reasons. Because like you said, Pitt didn't really have a broadcast curriculum at the time. So I knew in some way I was taking a bit of a risk going to Pitt at a school that did not have much from an educational standpoint in that regard. But then I think my sophomore, junior year, maybe I started to hear more about the launch of the ACC network, how they were trying to do more things in Pitt Athletics to amp up their broadcast for all of their sports. And that was around the same time that I had heard about the broadcast curriculum that was going to be started. And Kevin Smith was one of the, probably the very first broadcast professor that Pitt had. And so took his class. I think at the time it was the only broadcasting class that existed at Pitt. So naturally I took it. And sure, in some ways I do wish there were more classes that I could have taken, and I'm glad the current students have that opportunity now. But the reason I feel lucky is just because in some ways I was able to get out in front of it more than kids are able to now, because there is so much interest. And it's great that there's so much interest. But in this business specifically, one of the things we always say is if you go to a school like Syracuse, there's so much competition with your peers to get on the air and to get opportunities. And we're starting to see that a little bit more at Pitt, certainly not even close to Syracuse's level, I don't think. But I feel lucky that I was kind of able to get into the broadcast classes, get into opportunities at Pitt Studios before it really drew that much attention. And so because of that, I didn't have too much competition from my peers at the time, just because it was still very much under the radar. And I'm proud of how much it's grown, and Kevin has had a ton to do with that for sure. But that being said, it does kind of come with a lot more competition for roles and opportunities and things like that.
What were some of those biggest lessons that you did learn from Kevin when you first started to take his broadcasting class?
Yeah, there were a lot of good things that I took from that class for sure. I think one of the biggest things that he taught is honestly maybe not something that's even TV specific, really, is just the thing you'll notice about Kevin is that he knows everybody. He's a very good talker. He's very good at communicating, establishing connections. And I think he would be the first one to tell you that's so vital in this business. It's so much about who you know, how you're able to not just meet somebody, but follow up with them and maintain a relationship so that they can get familiar with your work, familiar with your name, who you are, and that can go a long way. And I think you see that all the time in this business where so much of it is game driven, right? It's not your typical 9 to 5 job where there's a lot of full-time jobs here and there. It's so much that's game driven. And because of that, you kind of want to be that guy where if a network or whoever, a school has an opening and they're like, oh, I just talked to so-and-so last week. Maybe they would think of you in that conversation, and then you have an opportunity. So Kevin is very good at teaching networking, how to build connections, and that's really helped me along the way.
And he certainly does know everybody. That was legit the number one reason why our episode with him was an hour and a half long, and it was so much fun for every single second. And there is something, Jason, though, that has been around for a while, and that is the student radio station WPTS. My good friend Frank, who ran the Pitt back in the 80s, he did a lot of play-by-play and commentating at the student radio station. So it is something that has been around a while, and that's something that you obviously got to experience as well. So what were some of your favorite memories when you did call games for WPTS, and what were some of the notable games that you did get the call?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I could go on and on about WPTS. If you ask me about them, we might be here for an hour and a half, just like Kevin. But it was such a great opportunity. And when I talk about the difference between here and Syracuse, that's another area that comes to mind right away. I think about WPTS, one trip where we went to, I think it was the ACC men's basketball tournament, probably in Brooklyn, either my sophomore or junior year, I want to say. And the Syracuse student announcers were right next to us. And we were just talking with them and asking them about, what they do at Syracuse and their careers and stuff like that. And they had said something like they were not on the air for a game until that season, and it was their senior year. WPTS at Pitt, I think I signed up at the activities fair August of my freshman year, and I was on the air the next week doing a show with 2 or 3 other guys, having no idea what I was doing. But WPTS just presented so many great opportunities for me. And that's why now when I talk to younger Pitt students who are talking about, hey, I would love to kind of go and do what you do or something similar, I always send them to WPTS because you get to do games, you get to make your first reel, and it kind of helps get you started in the business. But I think one memory that always comes to mind as well is Thanksgiving, my sophomore year. I think Pitt football played in Miami. I believe it was that Friday. Might have been Saturday, but I think it was Friday. And so because it was over break, there weren't many people around. They needed as many local guys as they could get. And I am from just about 25 minutes from Pitt's campus, 20 minutes from Acrisure, which at the time was still Hines. But they kind of last minute were like, hey, we need someone to call this game. And Pitt was 4-7 going into that game. And it was the day after Thanksgiving. And I was like, I got family in town. Like I don't know if I can do this game. We really, really need you. So like, all right, I'll do it. I call the game, and it ends up being the game where Miami was number 2 in the country. Kenny Pickett's breakout game knocks them out of playoff consideration, and Pitt pulls the upset, and it was one of the most memorable games I've ever been a part of. So I try to. Were you there?
I was there.
Yeah. So I try to use that one as a lesson a lot of times too, just in terms of, try to always be open to opportunities. And looking back, I blame myself for even dismissing that at all in the first place, because it was the day after Thanksgiving. Whatever the team's records were, I look back and I'm mad at myself for even questioning passing on the game. But it's just, you never know what an opportunity could turn into. And that was a game where I thought I was going to show up the day after Thanksgiving and probably watch Pitt get beat by 30 or 40 points against the number 2 team in the country. Instead, they win the game. Kenny Pickett has his breakout moment there. And it turned out to be a really, really cool day and a good memory. So that taught me a valuable lesson, I think, of, in this business, you're definitely going to have to work over holidays. That happens for sure, and weekends and nights and stuff like that. But just don't say no to opportunities. Even if you think it is going to be a lopsided game and it's going to be boring, you never know. And it's always worth it to just say yes and see where it goes.
Yeah, and just thinking about all the memorable games when you were a student there, Jason. I was in high school at the time, and also another big reason why I got into the industry as a sportscaster. I was a little bit of a late bloomer because, yeah, I did watch Penguin games a lot growing up, but the thought of me wanting to be a sportscaster really didn't start until I was in high school. And I really went full force with it because I used to go to Pitt football games all the time with my uncle. I was at that game. I was at the Pitt Penn State game in 2016. I'm not sure if you had a chance to call that one because that was really the game where I was like, yeah, I think I want to do this with the electric crowd on that hot day at Heinz Field that I'll never forget.
Oh, yeah. I think that was what, 42-39?
Yes.
I want to say.
Ryan Lewis with the interception in the end zone.
Yeah. So that, I believe, was like my second week as a Pitt student.
My goodness.
So I was not very involved with WPTS yet at that point, but I was in the student section, and I have very fond memories of that game as well.
Yeah. Did you get to go down to Charlotte in 2018 to call the ACC championship game?
I did not. I did go as a fan, I think, for that.
Oh, you went for that game, that rainy day? I wanted to go, but I stayed behind in Pittsburgh, and I was happening. Yeah, and I mean, with the screw, I wanted to go, but yeah, with how good Clemson was, it was like, man, I don't know if they can pull it off. But I was in Charlotte in 2021. That's a night I'll never forget.
Okay, yeah, I do kick myself sometimes because I was at the game when Trevor Lawrence destroyed us in 18, like you said, but 21, I could not go down because a lot of people don't realize, but that was actually the same night that Pitt volleyball beat Penn State in the NCAA tournament second round, which second round right now doesn't seem like it was all that important. Back then, for them to beat Penn State was a huge deal. So that was also a really memorable night for me. As much as I would have loved to be in Charlotte to see football win the ACC title, it was also really cool to be back. And I called that volleyball match when they beat Penn State in the second round and ended up making a run that year. So, and yeah, I believe that was actually the first Final Four trip they ended up making for volleyball. Obviously, they've now made 5 in a row, but looking back, that was a really cool night for Pitt sports because a lot of people, of course, remember the football championship, but it was also a really big night for volleyball there as well.
Yeah, and that's the volleyball is one of those primary questions that circled on my list because we can't talk about Pitt Athletics without talking about what Dan Fisher has done. But I would love to go back, Jason, to that time when you graduated. And how did this opportunity come for you to join Pitt Athletics full time after you did graduate?
Again, I think, Colton, a lot of this business is timing and a little bit of luck. Now, you can certainly set yourself up to be in good situations and prepare as much as you can. But I was lucky in how the timing worked out. So I graduated in 2020. I had spring semester shut down because of COVID about a month early, which was tough. But my bosses at Pitt Studios in the athletic department here had come to me a little bit before the world shut down. And they had said, hey, we're going to have an open full-time position this spring. We know you're graduating. We think you'd be a good fit. And so that was really it. I had interned at that point for about 3 years as a student. And the thing is, I really am able to look back and see how lucky I was because in the past few years now being full-time, I've seen just how many super talented and skilled students we've had that are easily worth a full-time position and have certainly earned it. But the timing just hasn't always worked out. So it really is dependent on just when and where is there a full-time opening. And that's what I'll tell a lot of them is look, if we had a spot for you, you'd be a shoo-in. You are a superstar student. But oftentimes those kids have gone off to other places and done fantastic things in other spots. But again, just to bring it back to me finishing school, I was just lucky in that when I finished, there was an open spot, and I kind of jumped at the opportunity. And growing up a Pitt fan, it was a no-brainer. But the timing was fortunate for me. Just by the time I had finished school, there was a spot, and I'm grateful that I got the opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jason. Yeah, and you, of course, have been at Pitt ever since post-graduation, and you have had the chance to see so many terrific teams through that process during your time as a full-time employee with the university. But, like we were just talking about a little while ago, you cannot talk about Pitt Athletics without mentioning the top program at the university right now with what Dan Fisher has been able to do with that Pitt volleyball team. So you got to obviously see that team firsthand grow into what it has become today. So what has that been like for you, seeing the growth of what Coach Fisher has been able to do firsthand with the program?
It's incredible. And I remember actually some of my first gigs that I even got at Pitt were volleyball matches. And I want to say it was my sophomore year of college. And looking back, I can't even believe that I was given this opportunity to see how big volleyball has gotten. But I didn't know too much about volleyball. Played it at family picnics growing up, and that was about the extent of my knowledge. But that would have been fall 2017. Again, my bosses at Pitt, I think they had heard my reel at WPTS. So again, just the importance of WPTS and how vital that can be for so many students. That was my only place that I was able to get actual content and put it together for people. But I think they had heard that, and they were like, hey, we have about 10 volleyball matches this year where we need a play-by-play announcer. I don't think it was even 10. It probably was like 5 or something, but whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, I'll learn volleyball. I'll go to some of their practices and try and learn the sport and learn the team, talk to Coach Fisher a little bit. And again, was just kind of lucky that opportunity presented itself. And I just remember some of my first Pitt volleyball matches I did were against power conference opponents, even if they were non-conference matches. We had one I think I did was Washington that fall, which is almost 9-10 years ago at this point. But even a match against Washington, it was a very spotty crowd. And I just think now it doesn't matter who they're playing. They're getting regularly over 2,000 people in that gym. So those are the moments where I really look back and I think, wow, it is incredible what this program has become. And I think what's really special is how their rise as a program has kind of coincided with the sports rise on a national scale. Because you look at, I think Pitt men's soccer has had a very similar rise in terms of the success of the program. They haven't been to 5 straight Final Fours, but they have been to 2. But the reason that they haven't gotten talked about quite as much is because volleyball, just as a national sport, is absolutely booming right now. And so it's been really cool to see the way that program has become what it is. And I remember it might have been the Louisville match last year where Pitt got 10 or 12,000 fans. And I walked out. I was on the event level, walked out onto the floor just to watch it for a few points from out on the floor, and just to look up and see every section in the Peterson Event Center full of people supporting volleyball. And especially, you probably know too, growing up and only seeing those types of crowds for basketball games in that arena, to walk out there and see it for a volleyball match was really, really cool. And just another moment of, wow, just remarkable of what Dan Fisher and his staff have done. And, it makes every December exciting, trying to see where they're going to go in the NCAA tournament, who they're going to play. He's done a tremendous job recruiting. Obviously, it continues to replenish the roster year after year. And I know next year they have high expectations again, so I'm already looking forward to that.
Yeah, not to mention see guys like Ben Roethlisberger come to your games too, as
Right.
well. And like you talked about before, Jason, you have had a chance to call some of those regional games. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you actually went on the road with them to the Final Four to call some games on 93.7 The Fan, if I'm not mistaken.
I did not go to the Final Four. I did
Or was
I
it
did
the
one or
Elite Eight? Or...
two I did do one or two tournament games, but did not go on the road.
Oh,
But hopefully they'll hear this and send me the next time.
yeah, definitely. And how has that been like for you getting a chance to call some of those regionals, just with the significance knowing it's a national tournament?
Oh, it's very cool. I think anytime you can call an NCAA tournament game in any sport is awesome. So yeah, I think to do that again, whatever sport it is great. But that Penn State match, what would that have been? Did we say 2021? Really just felt like they were getting over a hump, kind of, because Penn State, up until probably that match, was the perennial volleyball power in Pennsylvania. And Pitt was starting to get good, but it was still kind of, they're always going to run into a Penn State. They're always going to run into somebody who's just a little bit better. And that was the match, and that was the moment where it was really like, wow, this team has arrived. They are one of the national powers now, and they could beat anybody. So that was a really cool one. But just to be a part of it in any way, which I think is one of the cool things about working in sports, is when you see a team that starts to win and starts to really do something special on the court or on the field, and to get to say that you were a part of it in any way, whether you're an assistant coach, you're an athletic trainer, you're the communications rep for the team, you're the facilities representative for the team, whatever it is, to be able to say that you played a role in that type of NCAA tournament run in whatever way it is, I think is really, really neat. So I've been fortunate to be a small part of what Pitt volleyball has done.
And you mentioned a little while ago as well, Pitt soccer on the women's and the men's side has also had some success over the past few years. So do any games stand out to you that you have been on the call for during your time at Pitt for soccer?
Yeah, definitely. I would say for women's, I would go back to, I wish I could remember these years better, but Pitt women's soccer, their first win against any ACC team. They had never beaten an ACC team at all until I think I was still in school for this game. They played Boston College, and Amanda West, who, if you follow Pitt women's soccer, is one of the best players to ever come through the program, if not the best. She had a header goal, believe it was a golden goal scenario, and Pitt got their first ever ACC win. So that one was really memorable. Actually, even just this past fall, Pitt women's soccer kind of had a down year. Late in the season, Notre Dame might have been number one in the country, definitely top five. And Pitt women's soccer upset them. And it was a cold night at Ambrose Organic Field late in the season. But Pitt had a really, really good game. Notre Dame couldn't get as much going as they normally do. And Pitt women's soccer was able to get the win. And for their team, that was big too, because Ben Waldrum is the son of longtime head coach Randy Waldrum. So this was Ben's first season kind of taking over the reins. Didn't maybe go as well as they'd hoped, but they ended on this high note of getting a huge win against Notre Dame, and can kind of carry some of that momentum into next year. I haven't done play-by-play for as many of the men's games, but getting to do some of those. I know they had a good win over Wake Forest that I did one year. And they've had some really memorable games, even ones maybe that I haven't done. I know they got a win in the Elite Eight over Portland a few years back on a day where it was, I think, under 40 degrees and maybe snowing in Pittsburgh. So they've had some really good ones too. And Jay Vidovich, the head coach of the men's team, is fabulous as well. We love any chance we get to talk with him, and he's done, like I said, a lot of the attention goes to volleyball, but Vidovich has really turned around the men's soccer program in an incredible way as well. They were struggling really, really badly in the ACC until he came and completely turned them around. So the fall is always a fun time at Pitt between the soccer and the volleyball teams.
And moving on into the winter of the season, where, of course, and now you've had the chance to be on the call for so many Pitt basketball games as well. But it just seems, if you're a Pitt fan, then the game that always comes to mind is the backyard brawl when Pitt squares up against West Virginia in any sport. And I know you have been on the call for a few backyard brawls on both the men's and the women's basketball side. So what were those experiences like for you, Jason, knowing just the significance around it, with it being the oldest and, in our biased minds, really the greatest rivalry in all of college athletics?
Oh, it's awesome. And just part of my role with the men's basketball team, kind of how it works with ESPN and the ACC network is once we get into conference play, I don't get the opportunity to call as many of the games. They use people that are announcers for ESPN for the majority of those. So what always made the backyard brawl really special is I'm used to calling Pitt's games against mid and low major teams. Arena's not exactly packed. You got some fans there for the games against Eastern Michigan, Youngstown State, and other schools like that. But when I called West Virginia, it was packed. We had a pretty much sold out Pete. We have a real basketball atmosphere. And Colton, probably as well as anybody, the environment that you're in for a game impacts the way you're able to call the game. You can really work off the crowd as a play-by-play announcer. And it helps you, at least it helps me, to build up my own excitement when I know the crowd is super into it as well. And you really kind of allow yourself to sink into that environment where, without even really thinking about it, it just feels bigger. It feels cooler. It feels like a reminder of, wow, there are 12,000 people in here that really care about what's happening right in front of me. And not that you don't care about it when it's not a packed house, but it's just easier when you're able to feed off that environment. In the backyard brawl always delivers in that regard because you're going to have a packed house, and it's better than any other environment that I've gotten the chance to do in non-conference. So it's awesome. The backyard brawl, I'm glad to see that has lived on despite the separation of Pitt and West Virginia from a conference standpoint.
And as a play-by-play announcer, Jason, what are the things that you do to try to feed off the crowd in games like that, knowing that the crowd is in it as well as you as well when everyone is watching the game at home?
Well, I think, number one, it just helps with my energy level a lot. I think one of my early critiques that I've gotten feedback on and still get a little bit is in certain big moments in the game, maybe my energy or excitement doesn't match what it should be given the play that just happened. And some of the time, the reason for that is just there's not as big a crowd there reacting to it. And I think in some ways, a big crowd reaction can trigger to a play-by-play, okay, I need to really hype up this moment, really need to make this moment big because listen to how the crowd just reacted to that. And sometimes when there's not as big a crowd, you may see a big dunk or an important three, and it just kind of doesn't fully register in your brain as you're calling the game. Like, that was a really big shot. So it is a little bit more difficult in that way where you don't have the help of the crowd. And of course, when you have the help of the crowd, a lot of the time you can just let that take over. If you're calling a basketball game and there's no crowd, you kind of feel the need to be talking every half-court set, every possession. You want to fill the air so there's not too much silence. If the crowd is really good, you can let a team get into their half-court offense and just stop talking because, the Oakland Zoo is there roaring the whole time, and you'd rather the viewer at home just hear that rather than you talk. And we all know college basketball can have some great environments. So there are so many different ways you can use that to your advantage when you're doing play-by-play. Just helps kind of create that feel that you want when you're watching at home, of knowing that the atmosphere in the building is great. And as the play-by-play, you're always kind of trying to figure out how to best present the atmosphere to the viewer and use that to tell the story of the game.
And you also mentioned a little while ago how when it gets to ACC season, the linear broadcasters for the ESPN broadcasts usually take over. But you have had a chance to be on some linear broadcasts, including that thrilling victory against Wake Forest last week for Pitt men's basketball. So how was that experience like for you, Jason, knowing you were on ACC Network? And what are the differences between calling a game for a linear ESPN broadcast compared to your in-house broadcast that you guys have during non-conference play?
Yeah, so that was really exciting. Actually, a week ago today, from the time we're recording this, that was my first linear game that I've called on ACC Network. So I've done little things here and there, like the Pitt Football Pro Day show that happens once a year. That typically gets put on linear network. And some other little football segments every now and then get put on the network. But I had never actually called a live game on linear ACC Network until last week. And the only reason that happened, just to give you kind of a peek behind the curtain here, ESPN was trying to fly play-by-play announcers into Pittsburgh. They had 2 or 3 that had their flights get canceled and they couldn't make it. They reached out to us the day of the game to see if we had anyone here who could do it. Fortunately, I was able to. I was actually meant to be working in the control room that night. I was supposed to be the associate producer on the graphics bench for that game. So I found out officially about 10:30 a.m. that morning that I was going to be going on national television that night. But again, in this business, you wake up and you never know what each day is going to bring. It's about putting yourself in situations to be successful. I was in a spot where they needed somebody last minute, and I fortunately was able to be there and do the game. But it was a really, really neat opportunity, and I was grateful that I had the chance to do it.
So how was that for you crunch time, Jason, with getting ready for that game, knowing you had 8 hours to prepare for it?
Well, our producer, Tristan Russell, who does a great job himself, but he commented, he was like, well, it's a good thing you built all the graphics for the show anyways, because I had spent the day before, we were all snowed in. This was right after the big winter storm hit Pittsburgh. And we were snowed in the day before. I had built most of the graphics for the show from home. But I was fully expecting there would be no issues with announcers. We were told that the game was going to be played. Everything was set to go as normal until we got this call from ESPN. And so I had done a little bit of preparation just in regards to building the graphics and learning a little bit about Wake Forest from that. But as soon as I found out I was doing it, Wake Forest was actually doing their shoot around on the court at the Pete that day. So I immediately went to that, talked to the producer, talked to our color commentator, Terrence Oglesby, who was super great about welcoming me and kind of showing me the ropes and making me feel comfortable. Talked to the Wake Forest Sports Information Director to learn more about their team. Then went back to my desk and just started watching Wake Forest. Their last game, I think, was against Duke, learning about the players. And I am sure, Colton, that you have been in some similar scenarios where you get a last-minute call and you've got to scramble and just get everything ready. So you probably know the feeling, but that's kind of a little bit about what that day was like for me.
It happened to me last week at Mercier's, actually, so that makes it even more funny, yeah. Jason. And well, how was that like for you calling the game, and what were the main differences that you had to deal with calling a game on linear ESPN compared to your in-house broadcast?
Well, it really wasn't that different, and I think that's what allowed me to feel comfortable. Some people have asked, were you nervous at all? How did it feel? And but since I have done the digital games in the same chair with the same producer in my ear, in a lot of ways, it just felt normal. Now, I don't work with ESPN announcers for those games, so that was a little bit different to have Terrence next to me rather than Nellie Cummings or Nick Rivers, who do a lot of our digital games. So that was different. But aside from that, really, I think the only big differences were the little things about being on network television. You are taking a toss from somebody. You're tossing to somebody that's doing the next game at Virginia Tech. At halftime, you're tossing it back to the studio crew. You have ACC Network basketball presented by T. Rowe Price. That was new for me. We don't have sponsored items on our digital games, so that was different as well. But a lot of things were similar, and I think that helped me as I was trying to scramble to get ready for that. It's just I had a lot of supportive people. I had a tremendous crew behind the scenes, and knew that they would all kind of set me up for success for that.
Yeah, that's just amazing, Jason. And you did mention a little bit before you also have other responsibilities with your role at Pitt Athletics. So what are those other responsibilities that you do have along with calling games?
Well, this kind of goes back to, I think, what you were asking earlier, just about lessons that I've learned along the way, maybe advice that I would give to people, and just being open to opportunities. So a lot of my role at Pitt is really just kind of revolving around getting Pitt Athletics broadcasts on the air from a production standpoint. And when I was in school, I remember a lot of my bosses here at Pitt, they knew I wanted to do play-by-play, but they were also upfront with me and said, if you're ever going to work here full-time, you have to know how to do more than that, because we don't hire full-time play-by-play announcers. We hire full-time producers, broadcast coordinators, and production folks. So I kept an open mind and learned a lot of the back end control room stuff, like the graphics and how to produce a broadcast, and a little bit of directing here and there as well. And that's really the reason I got the full-time job out of school. So I obviously told that story already about how the timing worked out on that. But like you said, a lot of people maybe see the games that I call and things like that. But really, the reason I've gotten those opportunities and I have the job I have is because I was open-minded to the producing world, what opportunities that could lead to. So we have a great team here at Pitt. I know you're familiar with a lot of the people we work with over here, but Sarah Johnson, I mentioned Tristan, Reagan Check. We have a tremendous team of engineers, Liam Sporer and Michael Casera, and so many others as well, that all play a hand in making this department what it is. Paul Bardo is our department supervisor. And so just it takes a lot of different people to make this happen, to make television happen. It's one of those things that you don't really understand until you're in a control room watching it. And then you're like, wow, so that's how a replay happens. And that's how audio for the show happens. And that's how graphics get made. And so we're fortunate to have a really great group here that oversees a lot of that. And we have roughly 130 broadcasts that we do for home Pitt Athletics events each year. So it's a lot of games with a lot of different crew members on them. But we really enjoy the work that we're doing. And I think that's key to being able to do it, because it is a lot. And working in sports at times is time consuming and not easy. But if you have a good team and you enjoy the work you're doing, that helps to make it a little bit easier.
And what are the things that you have to do, Jason, to get ready for a game when you're the producer?
Yeah. And that's the other thing I should note is that I love producing the men's basketball games as well. So when they do get into conference season and ESPN is sending a lot of their own play-by-play announcers, I kind of have the chance to work on the other side of things and then be the producer for them and interact with them for a lot of these games. So typical week for a men's basketball game in January, they actually had four straight Saturday home games. So the 3rd, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th, the men's basketball team was home for all 4 of those, which was kind of nice in a way because it almost then allows you to work going in at the start of each week, knowing that you don't have too much in between and you can just focus solely on that game on Saturday. So how that would look is, I go in at the beginning of the week, try and touch base with my announcers, touch base with the visiting team sports information director, start by maybe watching their most recent game to learn a little bit about the team and the players, things like that. Start putting together some content ideas, whether that's graphics or video packages, so that you can have those ready for the game. And then on game day, you typically, as a producer, you'll go to shoot around for each team. which is good to not just see the teams practicing and put some names to faces, but also you're there with your announcer. So you're having discussions about the show, what you want to do in the open, what other storylines they care about. It's really, really important to have a good producer-announcer relationship. And I think that's what separates shows and can help make shows really good, is if you can establish a good dynamic with your announcers to the point where they respect you, you respect them, and you all kind of share that common goal of making the broadcast the best it can be. So I really take time in those shoot arounds to have those conversations. And then hopefully after that, once we kind of go through rehearsals and show them the content we have prepared for the game, we're all in alignment and in a good spot to get started.
And something that you expanded on as well in your role with Pitt Athletics recently is trading a headset for a stick microphone when Pitt football is playing at Acrisure Stadiums on Saturday. So how's that experience been like with you being the in-game host, I should say, when Pitt football does play at Acrisure on Saturdays?
Yeah, that's been really fun, and just finished in my second season doing it. It's been really cool. With our job here at Pitt, and our staff here and broadcast with ACC Network with Sarah and Reagan and Tristan, we don't have too much to do with football. So some of the other schools in the ACC, when they have a stadium on campus, they have a little bit bigger role in producing those games. Since our stadium's off campus, we really haven't had too much of a role when it comes to the football broadcasts. So I was super excited when they approached me about that a couple of years ago to have a role with Saturdays at Acrisure Stadium and do something for the football games. And it's been neat. It's obviously different from play-by-play. It's a little bit more of, you can lean into that home team bias a little bit more than you can as a play-by-play announcer, and kind of more of how do you engage the crowd in a game in venue, obviously, rather than through a headset on a TV broadcast. So it's been really good. I've loved doing that. And like we talked about, just growing up being a Pitt fan and now getting to do that in front of the fans at Acrisure has been a really awesome opportunity. And I love the Pitt fans week in, week out, coming out to show their support. It has been really neat. And we've gotten to see some good football too. I think the first year that I did it was the season that we got off to a 7-0 start. And for a minute, I was like, wow, man, I might be the good luck charm here. We won't talk about what happened after that, but that was really fun to be a part of that. And then obviously this past year, really exciting when Mason Heitchel took over as quarterback. So to get to be there on the sidelines, have a great view of the game and do that and engage with the crowd has been really, really neat.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jason. And something that you have talked about a lot during the episode here is how you also are teaching the next generation of sportscasters and students who want to go into the behind-the-scenes roles of the sportscasting industry. So how has that been like for you? And just like with how this program has expanded over this past decade, how has that been like for you, knowing you're a part of teaching the next generation of people who want to get into a career with sports broadcasting?
It's extremely rewarding. And I think just because I was recently in their shoes, and I try as best as I can to relate to what they're feeling, because I was just in it. And just going through school with that passion for the industry and excitement about what it could bring, but also the anxiousness about job prospects out of school and where your career could lead. Those feelings are not too far in my rearview mirror. So I do really enjoy the opportunity to talk to the students, to help them as much as I can, hopefully guide them in the right direction. It is challenging at times, though. Like I said, it's just the more ACC Network has kind of become established, the more classes there are broadcasting related at Pitt, the more students you have that are interested. And at times you just want to be able to help them all, and you want to be able to give them all jobs. But at the end of the day, there are only so many games on the crew list, only positions available. And, you wish you could just you love these students, and you really start to pull for them and want them to have a ton of success in their career. So we all, our whole staff, we try and do our best to help guide them on the right path, and it is rewarding to see the ones that do stick with it and pays off in the end when they get to do some really cool things. So I love getting to hopefully be a good mentor to them, see where they go, not just at Pitt, but after that as well.
What is the primary advice that you do give to your students, Jason, when they tell you, like, I want to be a sportscaster, or just in general, I want to be in the sportscasting industry?
Yeah, I think number one is, like I said before, just be open to any opportunity. Because you just never know where it's going to lead you. And I think early in my time at Pitt, I think I did have some fears every now and then that all the time that I was spending doing production work, behind the scenes work in the control room, was that kind of deterring me from spending more time on air and really getting reps with that, because that's what I wanted to do. But I found the control room work and the production work to be really, really enjoyable as well. And now I'm fortunate to be in a spot where I can kind of do both. And so that's what I give a lot of students the advice on, is just you don't know where an opportunity is going to lead. And a lot of students, I think, just want to be sportscasters because they don't know all the other positions that exist on a sports broadcast. And we've had a handful who think they only want to be on air, but then they come and they observe the control room for one night, and they're like, never mind, I want to do that instead. And some still want to do the on air, and that's fine too. There's multiple different ways you can go. But I, for example, before I observed the show from the control room, had no idea that all of that stuff went into it. So you just never know what's out there. And I think it's just really important to keep an open mind, especially when you're young and you're still in school and figuring out what you want your career to be. Try to be open to opportunities as much as you can.
And finally, for you, Jason, with all the phenomenal things you have done in your career, can you pinpoint a favorite memory during your career so far?
Man, that is really, really tough. I don't think I could pick one.
You could do multiple if you want to, obviously.
I do think we've touched on some of the highlights, though, throughout the time we spent together here. I think that Miami Kenny Pickett game that we talked about, probably going to Barclays Center and doing the ACC men's basketball tournament, calling the backyard brawl for hoops, even just last week getting to do that game on linear ACC network. Probably the football backyard brawl, my first year as the in-venue MC was when I think Pitt was down 10 with 5 minutes to go, I want to say, and came back in the last 5 minutes and won the game. I just remember me and a few of the other Pitt Athletics staff members were on the sideline just going crazy for that one. So all of those, and the volleyball match against Penn State that I talked about, there's a lot of good ones to choose from, which is just a reminder that I am, grateful and lucky to have had the career I've had so far. And like I said, I've met some awesome people along the way, and really grateful to have been able to build relationships, and just hope that it continues, and feel really fortunate to have been some really cool moments and create some good memories.
Jason, thank you so much for taking a few moments out of your evening to chat with me, my friend. This was such a fun episode. I can't wait for everybody to hear about your story when we release the episode. Thank you so much again, Jason.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Colton. It's great catching up with you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you around for some Pitt baseball this spring.